We wanted to get those things right, and actually getting this right means dealing with lots of different stakeholders of victims with different views. And so the process has to follow that the terms of reference has to go through the chair. And so we have already done with victims groups, we have already done some of that work on the terms of reference, but we cannot publish those, which we will do publicly, like I say, until there is a chair appointed. And I will not rush it, because I am going to take note of all of the feedback that I receive.
Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. Today, the government announced that it will take parental responsibility away where a child is born of rape. This will protect grooming victims. Children in this country will no longer be the only proceed of crime that criminals can have lifelong access to. Does the Minister agree with me that survivors have been failed for too long by a government that didn't prioritise giving them justice? A party led by a leader of the opposition that did not mention grooming when she had the power to do something about it. Instead, survivors have had to wait for victims and activists to be on these benches and the most fierce of advocates to be at the dispatch box.
I thank the honourable lady, and I think she mischaracterises me as the fiercest of advocates, because she, as a grooming victim herself with a child born of rape, is the fiercest, bravest. I could cry. I feel so proud that what this government did was seek to get her elected. And I have been campaigning for the thing that she has fought for with grooming gang victims for nearly a decade. I met with ministers of the then government and nothing was done. It is because the exact thing that the member for Bolsover has campaigned for was asked for repeatedly and nothing was done. It is because of her and this government that today I am incredibly proud of her, and to say that will change.
Rob Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a copy here of the government's response to the developments last night, addressed to the Home Affairs Select Committee, and I have to say that I find this response completely unacceptable. Is the government seriously implying that Fiona and Ellie, who have been disbelieved and called liars by the British state their entire lives, are spreading misinformation about a process that they have been directly involved in? Because that would be a deeply damaging thing for any government to imply. And worse, Mr. Speaker, there is a line in this letter about the government's proposed inquiry in Oldham, which says the government, and I quote, have been in discussions with Oldham Council about the right approach for Oldham. But how can that possibly be right? How can the Home Office discuss the right approach with the very local authorities that they are being investigated? It would be like the Post Office sitting down with the Post Office to negotiate how they should be investigated. So can the Minister explain how the government will be restoring trust right now in this process, given the contents of this letter that the Minister sent to the Home Affairs Select Committee last night?
Minister.
Can I just be completely clear? I'm suggesting that I will listen completely and utterly to the feedback from the victims that were and still are on. That they are not spreading misinformation at all, but his interpretation is a brilliant case in point, because I will be completely honest, the conversation with Oldham is, do we not think it might be better for them just to take part in a statutory inquiry? It is absolutely nothing to do with the idea that Oldham is telling me what to do. And the more people from that side, he can hold up his paper and have a smug face all he likes, but the fact of the matter is that there is absolutely no council in this country who will tell this inquiry where it can and cannot go. I have said that 1,000,000 times from this dispatch box, and yet the same thing gets peddled again and again.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I know the Minister won't want to comment on individual candidates to chair the National Grooming Inquiry. Can I just put on record that Jim Gamble is a highly regarded police officer with a long experience of dealing with this, and when his leadership of the Child Exploitation and Online Protection Centre proved what a fiercely independent figure he was, with a real track record of tracking down sick paedophiles online and offline. But does she agree that the chair of this inquiry has to be someone who can earn the trust of those who have been let down far too long by those in positions of authority? And can she confirm, as I hope she will, that the inquiry will not shy away from issues of race or class and will follow the evidence wherever it leads?
Minister.
First and foremost, I can absolutely confirm that. And not only that, the Home Office has asked, which was, I have to say, not done before, for police forces across the country to collect data on ethnicity. So absolutely that will not be the case. And with regard, I won't be drawn into, because it's not up to me. Although what I will say about the gentleman that the honourable member has mentioned is that he did resign because he previously, from a previous role working in this, because he thought the then government wasn't invested enough in child sexual exploitation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the victims of these crimes were vulnerable children who were ignored and who were gaslit and who were dismissed. 2 women have now resigned, 2 victims have now resigned because of this process and their lack of failure in the process. And yet what I hear from the Minister appears to me to be an aggressive and defensive tone. Yeah. Does she regret the fact? Is she going to listen? Well, is she going, remember these people watching, is she going to listen to the victims, and does she regret that these 2 individuals have resigned from the process?
Minister.
I absolutely regret that they have resigned from the process that, funnily enough, actually, in the particular incidents of one of the people, I have had no involvement in it. I do not know who are on the panels of victims. It is entirely independently managed by a grooming gang charity. One of the only interventions was to ensure that some of the voices who I thought deserved to be heard, that their names went forward to make sure that they were included. So I have done that on a number of occasions. Of course, I will listen to them. I'm actually meant to be with them actually right now, I'm meant to be in with those panels of victims, hearing their response right now. And I will absolutely, as I have said, I will take the feedback, both publicly and should they want to speak to me, as I have approached them, of anyone. But of course, I'm always sad when victims feel that they can't take part in a process. Of course I am. What I have to say is there are many different victims and they have many different views. And just because of the ones that we hear publicly, I want to make it clear that there are many different victims, and we have to make sure that all their voices are heard equally, whether they are part of the process or not.
Peter Dow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister has reiterated time and time again that victims must be at the centre of an inquiry. Given that, can she tell us what she intends to do to ensure that that aim is fully implemented?
Minister.
Look, from the inquiry, again, while the inquiry is ongoing, that will be a matter for the Chair. However, from the inquiries that I have been involved in that were successful and were victim-centric, there always has to be a system for supporting the victims, both taking part in the inquiry, but also just supporting them with the trauma that might be brought up. And usually those two things are separate. But once again, I am not going to be the chair of this committee. But undoubtedly making sure that victims are protected throughout the process. And should they want to go out and speak publicly, both negatively and positively, about that process, I would absolutely welcome that. People should never be stopped from speaking, but we have to make sure that there is available for support regardless of how you wish to gain it.
Cole Lockhart.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. There should be nothing more precious in the eyes of this Parliament than the protection of children, and particularly those who suffered at the hands of these barbaric individuals. Many of us are parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents, and this cuts very deep. But I know the Minister cares and is a caring person, but today we need decisive action. And given how one of the victims has walked away from the inquiry? Can two of the victims have walked away from the inquiry? Can the Minister state clearly how she will ensure that a fully independent inquiry can take place and that it prominently includes victims?
Minister.
I mean, all I can say is that the victims I am meant to be getting feedback from right now, that the reason I can't stand in front of you, I could have just gone, like, you know, in the air and picked out some random judge. I could have done that. We could have done that. But the reason this process, and the reason I can't even say when I will definitely be able to say when the chair is because I am listening to victims' feedback. But again, I have to stress that that process isn't easy. There are difficult dynamics within different within groups of people. There are difficult things being dealt with by the people who we have asked to engage. And so undoubtedly, that isn't uncomplex, and anyone who has ever worked with groups of people who have been wronged and shamed and treated badly would know that the idea that there is a straight line, a simple answer, to tell them that there would be a simple answer would be for me to stand here and lie to them, and I am not willing to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the Minister for her continued work. All victims and survivors who for too long have not had their voice heard, we need to make sure that is happening, and I'm sure the Minister is making sure that is happening. Can the Minister confirm what resources are available to ensure that survivors are properly supported through the process? And in terms of system delays, we know there are still issues with court delays, we know there are still issues in terms of making sure we go after all the perpetrators. So is she able to give a bit of an update on that and on the J inquiry recommendations? Thank you.
Minister.
I mean, absolutely. I think next week I will be chairing an interministerial group of cross-government to push through the other recommendations. Baroness Casey actually made 12 recommendations. People rarely speak about any of the others. But she did actually make 12, and this wasn't her most pressing one. Operation Beaconport, the policing one, was actually the one she put at primacy. And as I said in my previous statement on the 2nd of September, the 216 cases that move forward, that work is absolutely ongoing and runs alongside it. And actually, that's where justice will be served in our courts, if only they hadn't been horrendously degraded, that meant that rape victims are waked for years and years.
Sir Gavin Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the thing we all very much agree on is that the voices of survivors have to be at very much the heart of this, and it's worrying and concerning when two of those survivors don't feel as if the process is properly looking after them and making sure their voice is heard. Would the Minister commit to speaking to both Fiona Goddard and Eliane Reynolds to try and encourage them and reassure them that this is a process that really will listen to their voices?
Absolutely, that opportunity has already been presented to them. That I would be more than happy. I know one of them. I don't know another one. That opportunity is always available. One of them has my phone number. So the idea that I don't listen and have not been making myself available. I have tried to keep the process fiercely independent of government intervention, so that process can happen and victims can feel safe in that. But of course I feel sad that this is how it has ended, and actually I hope this isn't how it has ended, and I will commit to working to make sure that this isn't the end, and my door is always open to them.
Julia Mims.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 2012, a Bangladeshi national was sentenced in my Carlisle constituency for attempting to recruit 4 girls, aged 12 to 16, into prostitution. In his summing up, the judge described how the man's conduct had corroded the foundations of decency and respect by which all right-thinking people live their lives, whatever their ethnic or religious background. Will the Minister take the opportunity to again reassure all right-thinking people that this inquiry will look at everything to find answers, including the role of ethnicity?
Minister.
I will say it again and again. It will not shy away from findings where they are present, and anybody who has actually done the work in this space would know that that is going to be found. as her case in her constituency highlights, there is absolutely no sense that ethnicity will be buried away. And I have to say, every single time when there is some apparently needless delay, even though, as I've said, it took 7 months to put in place chairs for both the COVID inquiry and the blood inquiry, and nobody moaned about that. The way that that gets used, the misinformation I'm talking about, is the idea that that's because we want to cover something up. It will not cover things up. We are taking time to make sure that that can never happen.
Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know the Honourable Lady has been an outspoken champion for the victims and will continue to be so. But she must be concerned that 2 members of the panel have withdrawn, and we understand one of the candidates to chair the inquiry has withdrawn as well. And clearly there is a concern across the House about the fact that institutions that have failed the victims, such as the police, social services, councils, etc., and courts, are all in a position whereby they failed. And therefore, whoever chairs this panel, this inquiry, is going to have full rigour on services that they may have been involved in. And so, therefore, there's a matter of confidence. And can she update the House then on how that inquiry will report back to this House and what scrutiny this House will have over the actions of the inquiry and the terms of reference?
Minister.
I'd like to thank the honourable gentleman, because he is in somewhat of a unique category of always asking a question that is genuinely, it leads me to further questions that I think are pertinent. How the inquiry will report into here whilst it is ongoing is not necessarily something that usually happens, but if there, look, I will take that away, and if there is an appetite, but all I can say is there is no institution in the country, this one here, that doesn't have skeletons. Do I think all politicians wouldn't be robust in this? No, I don't. I think some would. And I can guarantee that I can point at people, the honourable gentleman included, who would show absolute rigour even against his own. And but there isn't a single, like with ICSA, we had a judge was leading ICSA. They lost the confidence of the victims. 3 people lost the confidence of the victims. It took 2 years. So there isn't an institution that didn't fail these girls. That's the whole point. There is no clean skin, but there are people, brilliant people, people who whistle blew, people who tried in every one of those institutions. And so that is essentially where we are left with this, but I promise rigour, the same way that when I saw things happening in here, I certainly was rigorous in...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I commend the Minister for her formidable personal leadership on this, and I'm so proud to sit on these benches alongside other formidable campaigners too. The Minister has reiterated that the inquiry must be trauma-informed, and I know from speaking to victims in my constituency of Aylesbury just how vital this is, that we're cognisant both of the initial trauma that they've experienced, but also of the re-traumatising effects of going through the process of seeking justice for themselves and for others. So can the Minister set out more about how she'll ensure that this trauma-informed approach is woven through the ongoing inquiry?
Minister.
I absolutely, as the inquiry sets up, as previous inquiries with very, very vulnerable groups of people, ICSA, that there will have to be things put in place to ensure that people can freely give their evidence, and that will have to be done in a trauma-informed way. And as was number 12 of Baroness Casey's recommendations, was that it would be, that what was needed for all of the recommendations would be fully funded by the government, and this government has absolutely committed to that. I very much expect that when the chair is in place, those conversations about exactly how that will look will begin. And the only thing I do actually control, I suppose, in any of this is that this government will pay for it.
Lee Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The cover-up continues. We have a Prime Minister who never wanted a national inquiry. We have a Minister who never wanted a national inquiry, and we have the Labour backbenchers who never wanted a national inquiry. So does the Minister agree with me that the victims of these horrific crimes will never get the justice they deserve as long as we have a Labour government in charge?
Minister.
It's quite impressive that you would stand up and say that after a grooming victim stood up and spoke on these benches, but, I've learnt to expect it. when the honourable gentleman stands up and talks about cover-up, I understand that or maybe he's doing it for clicks, I don't know, but I understand that he thinks he's doing, God's work in fighting this. The level of bad faith, the idea that it's easy to find a chair or easy to find people who want to step forward and take part in this process when it is mired in, I have to say, political point scoring like he just did. I have to say, I think that he should really question his own morality.
Sarah Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ellie Reynolds has said that financial dependency has made people stay silent when they should speak, and also alleged that people on the panel were isolated by discouraging contact with each other. I fully understand that the Minister has been extremely clear that this is a fully independent process and hasn't had government involvement. How does she propose to handle, though, the very complex relationship here between how Ellie Reynolds has spoken very clearly about concerns and ensuring that the process does retain the faith of everyone involved?
I mean, as I've said, what I would very much hope to do is hear those concerns directly from Ellie herself and see what can be done. What I also know, because I only know the victims that I know and have worked with before, when they have been on the panel, they speak to me about it like that because I have personal relations with them. What I can say is there are differing views about the levels of confidentiality. Like the confidentiality is not to silence people from speaking about their own experiences. It is because there are people in those rooms who have never shown their face, who are also victims. And for an agency, having run one myself, trying to manage that I can see why perhaps somebody might say, you shouldn't try and seek out the people outside of the meeting, because others might have said, I don't want people to, but they're not going to say that in public. So all of those things I can imagine. I'm trying to get across the idea of how complex these situations are, but I am more than happy to listen to Ellie and see what has gone wrong in the process for her and seek to make it better. I'm absolutely happy to do that.
Mike Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And we've heard what the Minister said about diverse views amongst victims, but is she concerned that some survivors of these terrible crimes have described the process in the terms that they have as a toxic, fearful environment, warning that there is a high risk of people feeling silenced all over again? And what is she going to do to reverse this failure?
Minister.
I mean, I refer you to my previous answer. I'm going to speak to them, which I have said now a number of times, and look into the process. Not a process that I have personally been part of. Like I say, I can only speak to the victims who I happen to have known before, and if they tell me they are on it, not the other way around. I can't ask who is on it. That it is confidential by its very nature. But look, of course I'm going to listen to that feedback, and like I've said, I will speak to those victims involved.
Catherine Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Victims must be at the heart of the grooming gangs inquiry. Does the Minister agree that getting the right chair is absolutely key to ensuring that happens? And does she agree that we have to avoid the scenes that we saw under the last government, which appointed 3 chairs who then withdrew from the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, an inquiry that took 2 years to start?
Minister.
The Honourable Lady, who I know has some experience of inquiries from her previous life, is exactly right. I look at and people don't remember it now, but there were victims going out in the press complaining about what was going on with ICSA. It went through numerous chairs. There is already much worse faith that exists, both rightly and wrongly in this instance. For me to allow that to happen in this instance would just make people shout, cover up. And so we are trying to do everything that is possible to make sure that those mistakes made by the previous government are not made again.
Finish, Matty.
The credibility of the National Inquiry rests on the voices, experiences and needs of victims and survivors placed at its very centre. Can the Minister show victims in Wales how this inquiry will be guided by their best interests when survivors have such grave concerns that they feel they must resign from the liaison of the panel?
I mean, look, I think that to go back to the previous answer, that the chair of the inquiry will set the tone for the inquiry. And that is why getting the right chair and making sure that the system is available for victims who want to take part in the inquiry that will care for them and look after them all have to be in place. But and that, you know, is what we are working to achieve.
Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for her responses, and I absolutely agree with her that it's crucial to get this right. So can the Minister be absolutely clear that the inquiry will not be watered down, particularly the focus on grooming gangs and ethnicity, including models of grooming where groomers focused on the ethnicity of victims, whether that be young white girls or even Sikh girls?
Minister.
Absolutely, and I absolutely pay tribute actually to the community response in his local area to recent incidences of very, very hideous sexual violence and put on record my love to the families and victims involved. But absolutely, this is a grooming gangs inquiry, and it will follow what Baroness Casey stated. As I stated in my statement, it will be 3 years long, it will not show away, and it will be a grooming gangs inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I acknowledge the Honourable Lady's commitment to get to justice on this, and I recognise the frustration that she expresses as someone who was responsible for the Infected Blood Compensation Scheme, meeting a diverse group of 40 different charities and representative bodies that didn't agree with one another. However, I would gently and respectfully say to her that we do face a credibility gap on this issue. And I would urge her to examine how she can get ahead with the communications in order that she can continue to demonstrate her commitment to get to justice. Because, frankly, we as members of Parliament have to come to this place when things get into the media and public concerns are expressed. And I understand her frustration, but getting that communications right and maintaining that pathway to delivery of justice is critical.
Minister.
I don't disagree with the honourable gentleman, and if I believed that either most of what I see reported on anything in this space is largely inaccurate and often comes with an agenda, if you will, more so I think than in the case of Blood. But I absolutely recognise and take my hat off to the job that he would have had to have done. But I absolutely recognise that, and there is a balance between wanting to give a complete and utter running commentary on a very complicated thing and making sure that people feel like something is going on, because nature abhors a vacuum and so does misinformation.
Mr. Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister has heard me many times implore her to move as speedily as possible to address the challenges of victims of this awful crime. But can I on this occasion implore her to take the right time to find the right judge? This is not a normal public appointment. This is someone who has to command the confidence of this House, of the public, and most importantly of survivors, that they will leave no stone unturned, investigate everything, whether it be ethnic, class or institutional, and will make her life harder if they have to. Will she take the time to find the right judge and not repeat what we saw with the child sexual abuse inquiry several years ago?
I absolutely will, and I think he gives me the opportunity to say that no matter who is picked, there will be people who are unhappy with it. like most politics that we deal with, let's just call a spade and stop pretending that there is a perfect situation. There is the best situation we can have. And funnily enough, in the conversations that I have had with some of the prospective chairs, the main thing I want them to take away is that I want them to feel that if they have to slag me off all day long, and you know what, I'd say the same to the victims, then that is exactly what they should do.
Rebecca Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Minister today? She obviously feels very deeply about this, and I think we all agree that anyone that was involved in these awful, horrific crimes must be held to account, and anyone who turned a blind eye, we must also shine a light on that and make sure that doesn't happen again. Can the Minister provide commitments that the inquiry will not be politicised, particularly after multiple local authorities have attempted to block investigations? I think this is a really important question because we do see this happening. Everyone needs to be investigated on this. It doesn't matter what party you are. This is too important.
Absolutely, 100%. And look, it would far be it from me to sit here and speculate about where I'd like it to go. But let me tell you, if I had my way and I was the chair of this inquiry, it wouldn't. You would not be surprised. I think that look. Where I live is one of the places that I have grave concerns about because that is where I worked. That it wouldn't stop me wanting to look there if I was the chair because it has a Labour council. I couldn't, excuse my unparliamentary language, give a toss about...
Can I just say, I'm sorry for the Minister that she felt she had to push it. She's doing an excellent job. She doesn't need to push it. She's better than that. I'll listen to you. No, I'll listen to you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister both for a statement and also for the passion and rigour that she brings to her role, even if sometimes she might say things that she has to apologise for. We greatly appreciate her dedication to the role.
Can I just, it may help. One of us is going to have to sit down. Actually, I granted an urgent question, so that's the helpful why we're here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Every survivor's experience of abuse is unique. Does the Minister agree with me that by taking the time to find the right chair, they will then be able to make sure that every story will be fully told?
I mean, I really hope so, but I'm not going to do what other people seem to want to do in this circumstance and pretend that there is a guarantee that I have some sort of magic weapon. But that is the process that I am undertaking: is that we get the very best chair that is supported and alongside the victims who have been taking part in that process.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Getting this right is both important and extremely difficult. I have two questions for the Minister. If, when she meets Fiona and Eliane, she finds that they're right and there is something wrong, can she tell the House what powers does she have to intervene on that? And my second question is, will the Minister provide assurances that the inquiry will not be staffed, again she might be able to comment on her powers and powers of influence, will not be staffed by individuals who previously dismissed the concerns of survivors and campaigners as racist slurs?
Minister.
So to the first question, I have every power to intervene in the process of how that panel, but the decision that I made was that it should be independent of me and it should be independent of my offices, and that it would be better handled by experts in this field. So, but you know, when I speak to them, of course I can raise those and I can make decisions about how it goes forward. I very much hope that we will be drawing to a conclusion, and that actually my involvement in it soon will be much lesser, actually. And to his other question, victims and survivors of this crime all have different political opinions, all have different views on the substantive. They have different views about whether it should be called grooming, whether it should be called groups. They have different views on all of these things. I will not stand here and say that I would eliminate any victim or survivor based on their political... but any victim or survivor working on this, and I will continue to say that as it is, because of their views, because many of them don't like me very much. Imagine if I just didn't let the people who didn't like me very much not have their voice heard. Well, frankly, I'd be guilty of a cover-up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister has made it clear that women and girls were failed by every institution, and it is a positive step forward that the failure is now acknowledged by government, and that acknowledgement is leading to action after years of inaction. But in Scotland, we have absolutely no acknowledgement and absolutely no action. So I want to ask the Minister what advice she would give me and others across Scotland who are becoming increasingly angry that the Scottish Government is doing all it can, not just to block an investigation, but to block any kind of independent scrutiny or case review of organised child exploitation.
I think that the Honourable Lady, first thing I'd say is that the inquiry, whilst is in England and Wales, one of the victims that we have been hearing about today, Ellie, lives very much in the borderland of our two great countries. And there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that some of the things that may get found in the inquiry will have findings across the border. Unfortunately, the trafficking of young girls does not follow lines on a map as easily as we might think it does when we administer it. But look, what I would say is that you have to continue to work with survivors groups up in Scotland to push for what exactly it is that they want to see in Scotland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Minister very much for her answers, and I know that the Minister's heart is in this to get justice, and I don't think there's any doubt about that. However, the news that these victims who have already been denigrated and treated as voiceless and worthless during their initial abuse have been made to feel this way once again in this committee. It is difficult to hear, and the Minister will understand that it's also difficult for us to accept that this is taking place on government watch. So will the Minister not agree that the inquiry is not getting this right, and instruct immediate action to be taken to give these young women their voice back and ensure that justice is served and safeguards are in place to prevent those from taking place on British soil ever again?
Minister.
I absolutely share his upset and frustration on the matter, and I think that he knows that when I say that I will do whatever I can to ensure that these problems are sorted out where they can be, that is what we will seek to do, and we'll continue to try and do that. But absolutely, what we have to do with this inquiry isn't just look at what went wrong and hold people to account. We have to make sure it cannot happen again.
Sam Carley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I say to members opposite that their relentless politicisation of this is no doubt making it much harder to find a chair because it will be putting candidates off. Mr. Speaker, as this inquiry gets underway, we must keep up progress on implementing the recommendations of the J Inquiry, ICSA. I raised concerns at report stage of the Crime and Policing Bill that the government's proposals to implement mandatory reporting of child sexual abuse don't go quite as far as ICSA wanted, and those concerns were raised again in the other place last week by Baroness Gray-Thompson. So will the Minister ask her colleague Lord Hanson to meet me and Baroness Gray-Thompson to discuss how we can remedy that in a way that works for everyone and protects children?
The simple answer is yes, I will ask that. To his first point, you're absolutely right, is that what we should all seek to be doing throughout this is trying to grease the wheels so that we can have the best inquiry possible. We should all be seeking to do that whilst holding people to account with as much scrutiny as is needed. But I will absolutely do that, and obviously I have met with him a number of times, and getting this right on mandatory reporting is vitally important, and much like in the survivor group, there are different views on either side.
Chris Webb, final question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Blackpool continues to live with the scars of Charlene Dowes and Paige Chivers, two young girls in Blackpool that never came home but were subject to grooming. Will the Minister confirm to my constituents in Blackpool South that the grooming gang inquiry will be thorough and comprehensive, committed to a full and transparent investigation, ensuring every avenue is examined to uncover the truth?
Minister.
I absolutely will, and funnily enough this morning I spoke to one of his constituents who has been a previous grooming gang victim to assure her of similar things, because I have to say quite a lot of this causes quite a lot of nervousness around and the need to manage lots and lots of different people's emotions, but I absolutely make that commitment to him as I made to one of his constituents this morning, and I make it to this full House.
Okay, please. Point of order, Jeremy Corbyn.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. Could I invite you to examine Hansard column 652 from yesterday during the exchange about Maccabi Tel Aviv supporters travelling to Aston Villa? In reply to